Good evening. It is August the 24th, 2016, and you are live with the EdTech Situation Room, broadcasting worldwide for an audience of only a few live viewers, but probably thousands of asynchronous viewers that will tune in later. I am Wes Fryer, your host tonight, and I am the Director of Technology at Cassidy School, where it is the silly season of the start of school with lots of tech requests. But I'm excited to be joined tonight, as always, by Jason Neiffer, my co-host. And Jason, I'm sure things in Montana are just extremely calm this time of year for all IT support people.
They are. We haven't quite got the support tickets that we expect here in a week or so from at least students that we serve, but teachers have been letting us know that they're back and starting to work their way into their digital classrooms. And I'm sure the next 2 weeks will present us with extraordinary opportunities to multitask and otherwise, be an evolved computer user. So I'm joining you tonight from fabulous Missoula, Montana, where we are starting to get a little bit of the typical August fire smoke. The air was a little chewy this morning, although not as bad as a year ago, as Facebook reminded me this morning by sharing with me photos of this time last year when it was pea soup smoky outside. But I'm excited to be here tonight. And lots of interesting news to talk about in the educational technology sphere. So want to get started, Wes?
Absolutely. I'll just tell everybody, if you're new to us, you can find all the links that we'll be discussing at edtechsr.com/links. We have been using, and I think it's been working really well, this is our 20th episode, a Google Doc, and we generally don't get through all of the links, but we basically are trying to talk about technology news with an educational lens. So, I'll jump in right away, actually, with something not from the week, but definitely the best article I have read in a long time. And it's called "If You're Not Paranoid, You're Crazy." And it's by Walter Kern. He wrote this in The Atlantic in November of 2015. I think that I was probably directed to this by the amazing and probably best advice that Jason has given yet on the podcast, Note to Self podcast, which is just full of great resources and links. And oh my gosh, the quick story is, our phones are listening to us, and you need to probably, it's a good idea to go to your privacy settings for your smartphone, take a look at the apps that you have allowed access to the microphone. Ask yourself, does Facebook really need access to my microphone? And in the article, Kern talks about, we hope that we're going to have benevolent overlords, and the information that's being collected about us and that we are freely giving away is just going to, here's an ad for, a new lawnmower because I just searched for lawnmower on Google. But there's a lot of weird things that can happen, and I am noticing these things more, and in the course of reading the article over a period of days, because it is a long article, my quick little story, like he talks about a walnut moment, was I had some Cheetos that I bought. We don't usually get a lot of chips, but I had some. I have this app called Pacer, which I am supposed to be religiously documenting my food and my exercise and my water. And literally shortly after I was enjoying some Cheetos, I got this text message that says, "Are you binge eating? Make sure you don't keep tempting foods nearby." And sure enough, not only Pacer, but Facebook and Amazon have access to the microphone. I don't know. It is a great article. It makes me think more about privacy. I am an enthusiast for technology, and I'm an advocate for using it in powerful and transformative ways to bring new opportunities for learning into our classrooms and into our lives. But at the same time, there is an undeniably dark side to the way that we are living in a surveillance age. And part of the educational lens is for all of us to be talking about how much we want to share, what we want to share, and not just blindly sharing, because I think there's a lot of that happening now. So any thoughts, Jason, on the surveillance state and how you are acting in response to your knowledge or your perception of what's going on?
Well, I mean, we've danced around this topic a couple times in the past, and I do think that generally speaking, end users need to be way more cognizant of their devices and what they're sharing. I think that part of the lesson here, actually, for me, the educational context is twofold. First, we should be having these discussions in classrooms, and I don't think there's definitive advice we can really give. I mean, there's good basic stuff. I don't necessarily agree with the put the sticky note on your webcam crowd. And I know that particular issue was discussed in some depth on the Note to Self podcast. I don't find that to be a particular threat, and maybe it's because I'm a chubby 42-year-old guy, and if you really are looking to score pictures of me topless, I guess go for it. But I would understand if I were in different physical context where that would be, a problem. But I also think that, the threats are probably more subtle than people hacking into your webcam. The fact that we share a lot of information publicly that we maybe shouldn't. And I reminded Wes of you going off of Foursquare a couple years ago, but I thought a lot about that, and I almost immediately stopped using Foursquare myself a couple of days later. Part of it was because I didn't know what I was getting out of it, to be honest. But the other piece of it is that, I do perceive that may be sharing at a higher level than I'm necessarily comfortable with. The other one I think about is people, or the somewhat promiscuous crowd that goes and robs houses based on Facebook posts, right? I'm leaving town for 2 weeks, and I'm going on vacation to Europe for 2 weeks, and da 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 da. And we voluntarily give so much information that ignoring what the kind of nefarious means of phones and tablets and laptops are doing, we have to make sure to make that cognizant to our students. And so I think these are important discussions. That article would be an excellent one to share on day one of a classroom environment to spark interesting and deep discussions. Something I actually kind of miss about, I miss a ton of things about being out of the classroom. One of the prominent things I miss is that, you start to get an eye for things that you think would play well in a classroom environment. That article was a fabulous example of something I think would play extremely well in a classroom environment. And so, the opportunities that you can give your students to discuss these issues, have them think about their devices and what context they're using them in, it's an extremely important topic. I would add one other thing to think about, and there's actually an excellent Note to Self podcast about this too. We obligate our students quite a bit in a lot of classroom contexts to sign up for services that are provided to the end user to create or to research or to aggregate information. And I've only in the last 2 or 3 years really started thinking about what is the implication of those things, right? I do a couple of presentations at conferences and trainings for schools about the privacy issue. The most often cited groups that do have or that have a perception of privacy problems is Google and Facebook. To be honest, I'm less concerned about those companies because I feel like they have clear privacy policies, and both of them do bend over backwards to help you set your privacy settings or check what they're collecting on you. But that all said, when you go sign up for Classroom Dojo and you're sharing actually fairly sensitive information about student conduct, right, or about student behavior and performance, what is the implication of that? If you're signing up for a graphics program that you're having students create or paint on there, and students are sharing personal information, get access to that tool, where is that information going? And I heard actually a couple years ago of a school district, and I want to say it's Denver, and I could be wrong about this, but that's come up with a vetted set of tools they're comfortable with from a privacy standpoint to say that we're going to limit to these tools that have been vetted by a district. But at the risk of sounding paranoid, as a classroom teacher, you are exposing your students to privacy threats if you're having them sign up for X, Y, and Z. And there's lots of ways around that. You create teacher accounts. You can have students lie on those forms, although that creates its own problems because oftentimes that's a violation of terms of service, which having a classroom have students sign up and violate the terms of service, a commercially available product, seems like it also is open to scrutiny and criticism. But those are all things that are kind of swimming around these topics, and unfortunately, we just don't have clear answers to them. So I think if you can talk about this as a teacher with your students, it's important. You should talk about it with your colleagues, and at risk of maybe kicking up some dust that you don't know what to do with, bringing in your administrator and your technology staff in for these conversations, I think is extremely important.
I got to tell a fast story, and then we'll go to your first article. Let's flash back to 1998, 99. I am at Rush Elementary School in Lubbock, Texas. I am a computer technology teacher and facilitator, so half the time I get to work with teachers with integrated lessons, and then half the time I've got kids, in my room teaching them by myself, whatever, basically kind of whatever curriculum we want, because it's pretty open. Keyboarding is like the only requirement to get to. So I end up actually, and I cringe at this, and hopefully I can't be, held liable for something, and nothing terrible happened, but I helped all my kids set up their own Yahoo accounts. And this was in like 98, 99. And if I think now about all the bad things that can happen, I mean, we are setting up, Google accounts for our lower division grades 1 through 4 students, elementary kids this year. It's going to be internal only. And we've got, some gaggle safety monitoring that we're paying for. Boy, so naive, and nothing bad happened. And it was opening up a new world of possibilities. And there were lots of good conversations that we had, but gosh, in those early days of the web, as things mature, and we become more aware of stuff, I don't know. That's one of those things that I cringe to think about. I'm glad. I mean, I can picture, and I know the names of some of those students, and I'm sure that they remember, opening up the world of email. But anyway, that probably wasn't, not probably, that was not a smart thing to do. I would not do the same thing today.
Yep, and in fact, I did something similar too. I had kids setting up Gmail accounts in 2010 and 11 because there was no district email accounts, and I wanted to use the tools. I thought Google Docs was super awesome, and it was the right decision to do. And in retrospect, I would go back and tell Jason to stop being an idiot. And the liability piece is I get a little tired of, because I think that there's overprotection, and we have to let kids experiment a little bit, but it's an important issue, and the privacy thing is just the start of it. So extremely important topic.
All right, where do you want to take us next?
Well, an interesting article today in I forgot the name of the site. Recode reports today that there is a study released about screens accessing streaming services, and as it turns out, mobile devices are starting to become the most popular way to access streaming services. And part of the point that the Recode article is making is that personal devices, small personal devices, are starting to become the default way to consume even traditional media like Netflix or Hulu or services that are paid-for services. And I'm sure if they went into more detail, or if they start doing a little micro-analysis, that part of this is also the shift to TV that's outside the more traditional realm. But still, I think it's an interesting piece of this process. And now the other data points they pointed to, 30% of internet data usage at home comes from phones and tablets, which means we are moving away from desktops, laptops, even smart televisions, and instead working more towards personalized devices. And we talk disruption a lot on this particular podcast. It's an important topic for schools, but it really does, in the same way that the cheap laptops 10, 12 years ago were starting to make it into students' backpacks, and then quickly the tablet in 2010, 11, 12 started replacing for that. We need to be thinking about how is it that the tools we use work on phones and tablets. How is it that students can learn on those devices? And I'll be fully frank, my organization doesn't even officially support phones or tablets. as a learning device. A lot of our students attempt, and I'll be honest, the reason why is document management. It has little to do with the screen size and more to do with, students are somewhat befuddled by how you'd create a Word document on phones and tablets. But it's an extremely important piece of the puzzle here. And I think it calls into the question the future of huge screens. I think it calls into question the future of streaming boxes. Is it important for us to have a big screen in a classroom? Obviously, we're not there yet, but we're close. And as these numbers increase, it's certainly going to challenge the way we consume media.
I've got a fast story to share that's related that happened 2 weeks ago. So Tommy Snyder, shout out to him, is on our tech team. He's the debate coach, actually, for our school, and in his second year of teaching, came from the University of Oklahoma, and he's half-time with our IT staff doing tech support. And he's a Windows Phone guy, which not a lot of those around, and I am probably the last person on, well, maybe not the planet, but certainly in my neighborhood, who's gonna stand up and say, "Wow, Microsoft." I've just had lots of negative experiences. I think whatever you have, use it well, and I'm not telling anybody to throw away a device. But this was amazing. He is able on his Windows Phone to plug it into his monitor and his keyboard and mouse and have a full-blown Windows system, not a mobile operating system, not, something that's underpowered. We're talking full-blown Windows 10 that is totally running off of his phone. And I was just like, oh my gosh. Now, a little bit later, I think this was this week, there was something happened with his phone and he didn't get text messages, and it was some kind of wonky thing, and I teased him about he needs to get an iPhone. But that seriously was the most impressive mobile phone, sort of thinking about it being a replacement that I've seen. Because if that's a glimpse of the future, and we've talked about Microsoft, pressing the boundaries of innovation and really trying to reinvent themselves, etc. If that's a glimpse of the future, I mean, I loaned my Chromebook, our personal Chromebook, to a friend, so I don't have a second screen here. So I've got our links, and yeah, I'm consuming it here. This is probably the main device at home, even though I've got an iPad that I'm using. So, if this device can go to work with me, and I plug it into a screen and a keyboard and a mouse,
yeah,
we're glimpsing the future there. And it challenges me as an IT director thinking about devices that we're going to be purchasing and replacing. It's been an assumption that, yeah, you had a MacBook Pro and now it's 5 years later and you need another MacBook Pro. I don't know. Is it gonna be the tablet? I'm not saying it's going to be the phone, but as the computational power of these devices increases, it pushes the boundary of saying, what do you need in order to do your work? And certainly when it comes to consuming, everything I need to consume is here. Everything I need to produce and share and create, not here yet. Lots of it is, but not everything.
Yep. And by the way, there are Android versions of the Windows Phone thing. There's something called the Superbook, which is a $99. It's kind of like a laptop shelf for Android phones. There's a couple Kickstarter projects right now we're aiming to do the same thing. It's a lot. It's really interesting what direction that's going into, and in fact, that would be the answer to my criticism of using phones in context sometimes of more productive apps, is that if you can get to a larger screen or can figure out the document management, that's probably going to be a better option than, kind of trying to kick it entirely on your phone. And the thing I keep going back to is that even if it's a really low function, prepaid Android phone, these are still sitting in our 7th and 8th graders' backpacks on the way to and from school. And harnessing that is important and really powerful, even if you're just a voice on a recording, even if you're a simple activity or even reference to an app, there's a way to engage that. And there's lots of great examples of that in schools. I still don't think I've seen yet a wide implementation of that in a way that, another school could say, that's how to do it, and that's how to get the change you're looking for. Not that there's schools that aren't doing pretty amazing things, with smaller mobile devices, but it's coming, and it's definitely going to impact the way we engage with information.
Definitely. And I would actually, and as a last note on that one, I'd say Seesaw is the most transformative app for sharing media content that I've seen on a mobile device that I used in the iPad media camps this summer. My wife's used for 2 years. We had teachers use last year. And that ability to readily not only access content that the teacher's sharing, but be able to create your own content, share it, comment on it, have a very vibrant, interactive community. That just really pushes the boundary. So I'm going to jump down to an article about open content. This was from Popular Mechanics on August 21st. NASA just made all its research free online. And that doesn't include certain things with patents and there are some, there's probably classified stuff that they didn't release either. But yay, kudos to NASA, kudos to our government in promoting open content. I was thinking about this for some reason tonight about disappointments that I've had in the Obama administration from an educational policy standpoint, but there have been some things they've done well. I think celebrating White House fellows and celebrating innovators has been a good thing. I think the focus that they've had on open content is really good. There's a lot of educators out there today, probably a lot of tech directors, and certainly, superintendents and heads of school and just and board members that do not understand how hugely important open content is, how we should be leveraging it in multiple grade levels. And there's a lot of important work that we can do, I think, in sharing open content with other teachers and also contributing to it. And, unless we're rudely interrupted by YouTube. So we've just had our first unexplained disconnection. This is part 2 of episode 20 of the EdTech Situation Room. Just talked about a NASA article for open content. Jason, your views on open content and NASA's leadership.
Well, I'm glad to see that particularly research organizations are doing this. One of the things that I think is absolutely critical, and I've seen a lot of press around this, so it's not a new opinion. But if the government's funding the research, it should be open. I mean, that's really the bottom line for me. And there's a lot of money that goes into research universities. I don't mind that there's technology transfer and those turn into businesses, and I think that's an important part of the research process, beginning to end. But if the people are funding it, then that should be open content and not in any way draw profit. And I'm sorry, not in any way draw profit with a closed system regarding research. And so, and I'm glad to see this particularly happening. I think that kind of leadership will become more and more important as I don't think it's too nerdy or scientifically future looking to say. At some point, NASA is going to be important for more than just out there exploration, perhaps communication, transportation in the future. They will become the critical agency for. So I think it's a great movement.
Have you run into any paywall issues with your research or through the university links and stuff? Are you all good for everything you want to get for your dissertation?
The University of Montana subscribes to a substantial number of research databases, and so I've not run into an issue except for one article that I was not able to find a digital copy of, and so I end up ordering. So this is an interesting story. I end up ordering the book that it's in, and it's one of those kind of research guides that has several studies or journal articles. And the book showed up, and it was 2 inches thick, and actually sent me down some actually very fruitful rabbit holes related to my dissertation research, but. It was frustrating because it was a good article, and I have run into that only occasionally, but it certainly is if there was important research behind a paywall or something that was only available in a pay for print edition, I'd have to do it. So that's part of being a comprehensive researcher, is knowing what's out there, but it would certainly be frustrating.
When I was, stringing out my own dissertation as long as I possibly could for some weird reason, I didn't have the logins because I wasn't paying the university. Maybe I did, but anyway, there was a time where I wasn't as freely able to get stuff. So it's frustrating. So and we're definitely living in times where, as a researcher and as a publisher, we have some choices about journals that we submit to, and possibly some choice, depending on which journal that is, what rights we're going to retain. For instance, if we're going to retain the right to publish our own articles on our own website, in addition to where they are. And I've been very disappointed by certain technology organizations that, have, I think, made a pretty big point of saying, hey, this paywall and this archive is the main way that we're making money. And it just, I don't think that's the right Mardi Gras float to be on when it comes to just information. And, I'm one of the people, probably among many, who's very inspired with every time I hear Jimmy Wales say, our goal is to provide access to, the world's information. He says it more eloquently than that, but open access to so much information. And again, for schools, this should make a difference, right? We do have access to a whole lot, but we've got a long way to go when it comes to the ivory tower and academia. And we see some folks pushing the boundaries with open journals and things like that. But in general, I think we see a lot of stasis and status quo when it comes to academic publishing. Maybe not. I'm not as into that as you are. So, all right, what's next?
Let's see. I'll share an article about something that I am quite sad about. Engadget and a number of other technology sources reported on August 19th that Google plans on phasing out Chrome apps on the Windows and Mac platform. And also, I know this from another article, Linux operating systems will no longer have Chrome apps. And it's funny because I read this article and it said that Google's argument for getting rid of this was that very few people actually utilize this as a platform, so it's probably smart for me to describe what that is. Right now, if you utilize the Chrome browser, you can download what are called Chrome apps. And Chrome apps are programs that run through your browser but actually have an icon, and you can put them in your icon tray. You can utilize them like you would an app on your computer. And in fact, you can run them without even have the Chrome browser running. And I utilize that. There are 6 or 7 Chrome apps that I fairly frequently use. And what I like about it is that I can, sign into my Chrome account on a Chrome browser and get access to these 6 or 7 apps without having to go to a website to install them. And I'll give you a couple of examples. There's a great system or system statistic Chrome app called System that allows me to see what the CPU is, how much RAM there is, what the resolution of the screen is. That's information that's not necessarily readily available on all machines. I can simply sign into a Chrome browser and then get access to that. If you've ever used a Logitech unified receiver, this is an example of one for those of you that are watching this on video. This allows you to hook up multiple Logitech devices to a single USB hub, and there's an applet you can download that helps program these little receivers. And you can download it for Windows or Mac, and there's a beautiful Chrome app that allows you to do that from scratch. You don't have to install it at all. It's just in your Chrome browser. You click on it, and you're good to go. And my favorite plain text editor, which is oddly enough called Text, is a Chrome app. And so even though Chrome apps will still be available on the Chrome OS system, which it kind of has to be because they've kind of built this notion off of web apps being the core of the Chrome experience, those same apps will no longer be available on your desktop computer. So I guess 2 points to this. One, there is some personal sadness to this note because I like this system. I thought it was brilliant. It allowed me to install a half dozen or so applications that I use frequently on every machine with, literally just logging into my Chrome system. But secondarily, it goes back to a point we've made at least a half dozen times on this show. You can't rely on free as a long-term strategy as an end user. So, if I were a tech director and I had found a Chrome app, there's a couple of wonderful integrated development environments or IDEs that maybe you were utilizing in programming classes or something along those lines, and it was easier, probably a lot easier than installing software from scratch. You're just pushing out via, like a Google Apps for Education Chrome browser piece. That's not going to be available at some point in the future. So, I read maybe that less than 1% of users were utilizing that feature. So I guess maybe the other notion tonight is I am the 1%. But
in many ways, not just
yeah,
this, probably.
yeah, no kidding. But at the same time, like that has to be millions of users, right? But that's, for a big company like Google, it's not enough to maintain apparently. So a sadness is wafted across my laptops.
So consider, please, sharing a Geek of the Week maybe down the road about more of that Logitech stuff, because that's pretty cool. I tracked with that a little bit, but I'm not fully comprehending all that you're doing. It's so interesting to see what Google is doing and how they're moving in the marketplace. A week or two ago, we'd shared the article about how the Android apps are coming to many Chromebooks, not all Chromebooks, but many of them. And I don't know if this has happened to you, but I find myself trying to touch the screen of my regular MacBook laptop because I want to, and I've done this with the television too, like, oh yeah, I can't swipe it, or, I can't just touch it. So it's interesting to see how Google's positioning itself, how Chrome fits into that, and web apps. Another thing that would be a good topic probably is the difference between extensions, add-ons, apps. And I think I've heard people at a Google Summit, talk about that. And I know we could Google it and find out. But anyway, that's something I'm not completely clear on. I do know that the extensibility of our browsers is incredibly important. I was helping our elementary music teacher today with her new Apple TV and her iPad, and I was cringing when we were on the YouTube app for iOS because we couldn't stop the ads. But, we were back on her computer. I was helping her build her first playlist on YouTube, which is very exciting. And we installed what's it called? uBlock Origin extension, which is a great ad blocker. And anyway, extensibility is huge, and so I don't know that I'm fully understanding why Google is phasing it out, but I guess that makes sense if there's just not a lot of people using that, and there's other ways to get the functionality. So.
Yep, and it goes back to Google's a company that makes money, and so if they're investing in a technology and it's not getting wide usage, it makes no sense. You could relate that to, I think we had pushed this article into this week as well. Chromebooks are starting to get more cachet. In fact, I read a great article 2 weeks ago from on CNET that basically said that if you're going back to school right now, don't buy a laptop. Instead, wait until the new Chromebooks are out that have guaranteed access to the Play Store, so you can run Android apps. Is that will revolutionize your computing experience and your Chromebook experience. And maybe with Chromebooks moving in that direction, apps don't make sense anymore because you can download actual Android apps from the Google Play Store, which makes it a big difference. So that is also starting to fire up quite a bit as well.
So I'm going to take us to a actual video rather than an article. This one was from The Verge. I guess they had it in an article on my birthday on August 20th. Celebrated a birthday this last week. The space station gets a new parking spot. And man, this is so huge in terms of the commercialization of space. And a friend of mine, Gail Lovely's husband, who just retired from NASA last fall, actually was one of the main engineers down in Houston working on this. And this is the portal, the door, the hatch, the connector that allows for SpaceX and Boeing and potentially other commercial companies to go up to the ISS, to the International Space Station, and be able to dock. And this video explains that currently there really isn't docking. What there is getting in close, and then the astronauts on the ISS taking the arm and then pulling you in, and then coupling you with the station. This new docking system has been set up to theoretically allow for an unsupervised docking. So if something happened or whatever, I mean, you wouldn't have to have the arm and some astronaut on the ISS, pulling people in. They'd be able to come up, dock. One of these actually blew up on it wasn't I don't know if it was the Falcon 9, which Falcon rocket it was that SpaceX had sent up. So they've got it up there successfully now. They have one. They want to go ahead and have a second one, so they have a backup. And I just think it's incredibly exciting. And I've said this before, in my passion and enthusiasm for STEM and teaching STEM, in 2013 to 2015, back in the classroom really will shine through, because one of my favorite things each week became curiosity links. And these were things to share with students. I tried to do no more than 10 minutes. A lot of times it was a video, but it was to spark some curiosity and some excitement. And amidst all the news that's happening, probably a lot of people have missed some huge headlines with space, like China landed on the moon with robotically, not with people, but they did that a couple years ago. And we just sent the Orion capsule like a year ago, December, into high Earth orbit, which was the first time we'd done that, I think, since the Apollo missions. And SpaceX is now working to get us to Mars. I mean, my son is his first week of school at Colorado School of Mines, where they have folks studying space mining, and the U.S. government has changed the law so that now companies that are U.S. based that find stuff on asteroids or on other planets can keep it. If you saw Avatar, part of that is coming true, where we have commercial companies that are going to be trying to mine things that are very plentiful out in the solar system, but maybe scarce here, whether that's helium-3 on the moon or other kinds of things. So this is an exciting development. It's something to share with kids. We cannot underestimate how important it is to help get kids excited about science, about exploration, about engineering, about all of those kinds of fields. And I was just loving this, and it's a nice 4-minute video that is kind of a news style, and they've got some explanations about what's going on, as well as interviews and great video. So awesome to check out.
Great, thanks, Wes. Let's see. Actually, this is one from last week too that I kind of want to talk about for a moment. Yahoo was sold several weeks ago. And that's been its own story, because it was taken over a couple years ago by a former Facebook executive, or Google executive, Google.
Meyer.
Yeah.
Google, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
Google executive. And, they've been trying to kind of become relevant again, and it didn't necessarily work out. And the company that eventually bought them was Verizon. And the reason why, in my mind, that's interesting is because they have bought a number of properties in the past couple of years, and now own a lot of content properties, which they did not before. And now suddenly they own what used to be the hottest tech property in the world, which is Yahoo. And so what's interesting about that is, in my mind, is that we're still trying to figure out what new media looks like in 2016 as it relates to consolidation. The internet was supposed to be the great, equalizer of media companies, and as time has gone on, traditional media properties have started snapping up web properties as a means of having control over multiple parts of the kind of publishing universe. But the fact that core technology companies, or Verizon's not a content company, and yet they now own one of the oldest standing web content companies on Earth, is an important development, and something we should keep our eyes on. Wes, do you use Yahoo anymore? Is that still relevant to you at all?
Gosh, I mean, I still have my Yahoo account from the standpoint of Flickr. I mean, I've got two-step authentication on my account. We have a person we know in our church who's been hacked like 4 times on our Yahoo account, and it's just like, I don't know what they're doing with security these days. I abandoned that account a number of years ago. I still probably have a few websites and things that are connected to it, but it's not that relevant in my world today. I do think that article, though, is fascinating, because they've said to shareholders, they're trying to become a digital media company. They see all of these mobile screens, back to Article 1 from this show, all these mobile screens as a huge opportunity for delivering content and advertising and, being able to monetize. I think this article talks about also the decline in bandwidth. And I'll note, I've got to cancel. I've had a Verizon hotspot for probably 5 years. And the whole time I've been paying $50 for 5 gigs of data. That price has not gone down. But we've moved as a family to T-Mobile, and dumped AT&T because there's so much more bandwidth that we can get, with a competitor. So companies like Verizon, and probably we'll see this happen with AT&T and others, are seeing plateaus in their cellular revenues, and we're actually seeing some decrease in prices. And so I think it's a great thing for, creativity and the creation of content for the web. The fact that they're probably going to be trying to produce independent shows. We have Netflix, we have YouTube, we've got, a lot of different players. I think it's a better day than ever for creatives in terms of not just having major networks and Hollywood in the traditional sense, maybe being your on-ramp to fame or to even just a livelihood. People are tired of Wes, I don't know what the right way to say this is, but, just hoping that Flickr doesn't go away. But we've heard you say just about every time, don't rely on free tools. And they have charged it and monetized it in some ways. But that's unfortunately going to probably be a part of the future, is we're gonna hear about Verizon saying, Verizon dumps Flickr. I mean, that'll be a horrible day. I will fly a black flag on my Twitter account when that happens.
One other note, and I did not recall this until I kind of tossed it back to you. The other major media company that Verizon bought was AOL. Also, at one point, a hot property as the main conduit of getting people online, and then pivoted, tried to pivot a couple of times, and then finally successfully pivoted into becoming a media company as they started buying up undervalued web properties, and now they own an impressive number of blogs and other traditional media, new media companies that are publishing. And so, Yahoo is going to, Verizon's going to own a pretty serious part of kind of the new media web. And, I guess maybe the upside of that for me is that it probably means that even more effort's going to go into making that content portable, by making sure it works great on small screens, although I don't think that's been that big of an issue for most modern blogs. But it certainly is something to think about. And, consolidation is certainly challenging industries.
Yeah, and they talked about in the article as well how they're merging. These two purchases are tied because the AOL technology, as far as advertisements and monetizing, and then Yahoo having these properties. So maybe that's going to be good for the long-term survival of Flickr. Hopefully, they're not going to ruin it if they find ways to send more ads and things like that. But it's a merger of those two worlds. And if we want to connect our articles and connect the dots, it's back to, if you're not paranoid, you're crazy as far as privacy. A huge part of this brave new age that we're in is big data, is companies being able to harvest information and utilize it to sell to advertisers. We are the product for most of the free web services, and then even some that we pay for. And there are careers that are being built and made, and that will be built and made in this world of web advertising, data analytics, coding, all of these things that go hand in hand with these companies and these kinds of announcements. So where's the STEM club at your school? Where's the computer science? Are you making computer science cool? Is it cool to be a geek at your school? It should be. We should really be celebrating kids that have, aptitudes and skills. I didn't drop the article in this week, but there were a couple more articles, of course, about hacks. We had the Democratic National Committee, or the DNC, get hacked supposedly by Russians, and then the FBI, I think there was an article about them being hacked. And it's just we got to have we got to raise up a generation of individuals that are going to have great tech skills and are going to be white hats to use their skills for good and not for evil, to protect us from all these nefarious and malicious things that people would like to do to us.
Okay, well, I think we're nearing the top of the hour, so I would suggest maybe we do our Geeks of the Week. Wes, why don't you start us off on a product, or at least a brand name that I love personally. Go ahead.
Absolutely. My Geek of the Week is the Anker Bluetooth Folio keyboard case for iPad Air 2. Had an opportunity this summer, and as we've kicked off school, to order a few more iPads for faculty. We have our English department, 7 faculty, that used a really cool app called Harkness, which I hadn't heard of before. It's a discussion app that's based on a pedagogy of mapping the discussion that's happening in the room. So you identify, who's being quiet or who's dominating, etc. But of course, having an iPad, there's all kinds of other things besides just this Harkness app that they can do. And so I was looking for a good Bluetooth case and keyboard that would be reasonably affordable. We've been paying $30 to $40 per case, and this case is $36. It's been very well received. It says in the last 6 months if you use it 2 hours a day. I'm sure they're using it a lot more than 2 hours a day, but it has a long charge. And Anker is a company, I don't know if I heard about it from you or someone else, but we have our chargers in the car from Anker. They're smart in terms of knowing if you've got an iPad or that has a higher amperage need or a phone.
Yep.
We've got a multi charging station in our kitchen that's Anker. So great case if you're looking for something. And I still honestly think for schools, the iPad 2 is a great purchase. We have not purchased any Pros yet. You can't use the pencil that's Apple stylus, but there's lots of really good styluses. The Adonit Jot Pro is my favorite for sketchnoting. So anyway, if you're looking for it, I think iPad 2, but go 64 gig, don't go 16 gig, and go for that $36 case. It's working great for our teachers, and I'm probably going to be ordering more when I have a chance to order more teacher iPad cases.
Great, and I would give another shout out to the Anker brand name. Go to Amazon, look for Anker equipment. I've never gone wrong buying cables and chargers, and I have a Bluetooth speaker that I've picked up from Anker, and it's cheap enough to to not worry about it if it ends up breaking on you or getting lifted or whatnot, but still high quality enough to be able to rely on as a day-to-day device. And that's been one of the great things there's about a half dozen peripheral companies that make chargers and cables and Bluetooth speakers, and then will oftentimes move out into things like a phone and tablet cases, and it's really increased the quality and brought down the price, I think, of that on Amazon. So I'd like to share with you this week, I've mentioned this earlier on, but I've now published my longer article on the Tech Savvy Teacher blog on Cloud Ready. So I would refer you to blog.ncce.org, which is where I publish a blog post related to educational technology, but it's a pretty extensive post. But basically, Cloud Ready, for those of you that don't know about it, is a Chromium OS install that allows you to turn a laptop into a Chromebook-like device, and their brand name for that is Cloud Ready. And I've mentioned this in some detail before, so that's I won't go into it in great detail here because the blog post does a pretty good job at it. But I did this summer, as part of an experiment, search around eBay, and I picked up 2 laptops, one for about $50 and one for $70. I dropped in an SSD drive in both that would have cost used $15, $20. New, larger one new would have been only $30. So we're talking about both of those devices being $100 or less. And using Cloud Ready, I turned them both into wonderful, fast, responsive Chrome devices. And in fact, the smaller one, it's a little 12-inch Lenovo, 6-year-old 12-inch Lenovo, first generation i5 processor, a netbook or ultrabook or whatever you want to call a 6-year-old tiny laptop, and it's better than the commercial Chrome devices that I've used or reviewed or purchased. And it's fast and responsive and amazing. And so you can do some advanced things and dual boot with Windows and yada, yada, yada. But my advice would be to find an older laptop, pull the hard drive, throw an SSD drive in if you've got the tech savvy to do that. If not, buy an old laptop for $50 and teach yourself that way, right? It's a good skill to have, I think, and you can turn that into a fast, responsive Chromebook. So blog.ncc.org, and enjoy that long post.
Awesome. I want to close with a shout out to Marta, who is a librarian in Tegucigalpa, Honduras. She tweeted us with the hashtag EdTechSR on August 17th, saying she just saw episode 19 and said it was always worth your while. So Marta, thank you. We appreciate the shout out. We would love for you to share our podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at EdTechSR. Find us online at edtechsr.com, where we have links to the MP3, the 32 kilobit, relatively small versions of our hour-long shows that you can download to your favorite podcatcher. And you can also access the YouTube versions, which this one may stay in two parts, or maybe I'll combine them and re-upload. So you can find me, Wes Fryer, at wfryer on Twitter. My blog is speedofcreativity.org. And here in a couple weeks, I will be starting off a STEAM club with Megan Thompson, who is our elementary art teacher. Very excited about that. And we'll be sharing from our Cassidy STEM Twitter channel as well, if you do not have enough Twitter things from me and the regular channel. So Jason, you want to take us out and tell us where everyone can find you in addition to your wonderful NCCE blogging?
Sure. I am on Twitter at TechSavvyTeach. I do post usually 15 to 20 links a week of something that I'm reading that I find interesting. I will tell you that probably for the next few weeks, I'm looking forward to my Android Nexus 6 phone to get the newest version of the Android operating system, Android Nougat, or Android N for those that don't like the name Nougat. But I will be talking probably a lot about how that's impacting my phone. And then, of course, I do blog at blog.ncc.org.
All right. And I'm going to do this tonight when I post. I'm going to put a quick little survey. If you have stayed to the bitter end of our episode 20, we're just going to do a quick little Google form to find out a little bit about you and anything that you would like to let us know about the show, anything in particular that you would like to hear us talk about more. This show continues to be an experiment, and we're talking about possibly maybe joining some networks, or at some point, who knows, we may explore advertising or whatever. I don't know. It's fun. I always learn new stuff from Jason, and we appreciate you in any way you can share the show. But thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another round of educational technology news and analysis from Missoula, Montana, and Oklahoma City.